Hello, this is PubShorts, episode 35, titled Gimme Facts, Joanna. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Eddie Grant strikes once again.
No, not
It's a song I haven't heard for a long time.
yes, and today's title is referring to a song, Give Me Hope, Joanna. It is a classic anti-apartheid song, and we have a story from the continent of Africa. That's the closest that I could find an English artist with a song. But let's introduce ourselves, Tony. So my name is Dr. KK. I'm the innovation officer at Trinka and Enago. And Tony, please.
I'm Tony O'Rourke, and I'm VP for partnerships here at Enago, and I look after the commercialization of our AI and editing products to publishers with universities, work with universities around the world. And yes, tell the world what PubShots is? PubShots is KK.
It's a weekly podcast conversation streamed live on LinkedIn and YouTube usually. And if you're watching this on YouTube primarily, if you can subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification icon. And if suppose you relate to some of the stories, we are talking a lot about research integrity in this. And if you're passionate about it, please let us know what you thought. And if you want us to talk about something, please let us know and we will try to include that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Tony, are you ready for the first paper that we are
Let's go.
discussing? All right. So
Let's go.
the first paper, it is a research article published in Administrative Science Quarterly. It is titled Resisting the Algorithmic Management of Science, Craft and Community After Generative AI. So that's a lot of, there's a heavy title, but basically we are talking about how the culture of publishing has changed, and the author of the paper states the pressure that researchers have to publish or perish. But that is not the only thing that is threatening the institution of science. With the advent of generative AI, there are more challenges, and sometimes some of these existing problems get worsened. And here the author recommends that we have a community-based action and several next steps suggested. So I'll pause here and ask for Tony's thoughts on this. Tony, what do you think so far?
Um, it's an interesting article. That what he's highlighted is how the market has changed. I mean, there was something in the paper which says how technology has driven changes, has forced down the cost of publishing. I'm sure if we asked that question to some of the world's leading publishers, they would disagree with that because there are costs now being incurred in terms of server structure and IT and management that didn't exist
Right.
20 years ago when print was more dominant.
Yes.
But no, it's true. The cost of entry has come down, and therefore, it's easier for a new entrant to then bring a journal, some new content in the market, as we've seen with these pirate journals that keep popping up.
Yeah, so some of the more detailed points that the paper discusses is the transformation of the scholarly publishing industry after the advent of the internet and the rise of quantitative metrics like the impact factor. So this is the algorithmic management described in the title, and some of the current practices of publishers are managed by algorithms to attract more viewership and readership and everything. Yeah. And this has eventually resulted in the publish or perish culture. And what the author is arguing is that generative AI can worsen this, and some of the next steps or the suggestions by the author for preserving the craft in scholarly work include deep intellectual engagement. I guess, Tony, you would agree to that, as well as reinforcing the scholarly craft itself in terms of writing. There's an art in writing research paper, and also the writer also stresses on the importance of human interaction and reforming evaluation practices, including what we currently hold as a gold standard for peer review, for example. So very interesting things, and these will eventually affect some of the developments going forward in the next decade or so, including some of the tools and automations that will be coming up,
and some metrics that will be used.
Yes,
as well. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
that's changing all the time as well.
One interesting point that I've highlighted in my notes is that the recommendation for the author that the field, that in the scholarly academic field, should adopt slow science practices. Slow science, interesting concept, that encourage careful reflection, and scholars and journals must design interventions that resist the drive for sheer volume and superficial metrics. Interesting. I mean, in a attention span world, in a world where attention span is shrinking, where everybody is watching TikTok videos, that's
in an ADHD world.
Yes. So the author, Beth A. Betchke, is recommending this. So this is a very interesting paper. I enjoyed reading and I learned a
I
lot
mean, it's
from.
not the first. It's not the first time, KK, that we've had a paper which is arguing for quality over quantity.
Right.
But we are where we are. The market has changed. The research ecosystem, that whole system has changed so much over the last 20 years that
Right.
it'd be lovely to think we could go back. But I think the speed, the quantity and quality thing will just have to go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important that organizations like us can help support that.
Excellent. So next is a sort of related article related to maybe publish or perish. This is in a Nature news article titled "Retractions caused by honest mistakes are extremely stressful," say researchers. So these are results of a survey of around 100 authors. So the survey results show that many retractions stem from data management errors, and almost half of the respondents found that this is an extremely stressful process. And the
Yeah.
article also highlights the lack of discussion on this issue in the scientific community, and some of the common errors that were noted include data processing errors and coding errors. So interesting things. And so, Tony, I mean, I always am of the belief that science is obviously it is an evidence-based thing and people are actually doing, but there could be honest errors. And, for people who commits such errors, if their papers are retracted, there need to be a sort of a redemption mechanism, redemption path, right? What do you
Oh,
think?
honest errors. I'm sure there is a redemption path. I suppose if I had my mean hat on, I would think if these errors happen too often, then the author, the researcher, need to ask themselves whether they should be in research if those errors are recurring. But there are good organisations out there that can help authors. There's lots of tools out there that can help authors. If they're worried about things like reproducibility of data, for example, there are good resources that are available to researchers like CodeOcean, where they can store data. I just think it's a shame, but we all look to the research community for excellence. Once you can forgive, twice, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I
If,
want.
if somebody makes 10 honest errors in 10 years, would you trust their research? I don't know. I'm not. It's a difficult one.
But when you compare it to research misconduct related retractions,
Oh,
completely
it's
different.
chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
It's chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
But there's misconduct, and then there's also what the word inability. Somebody who's just not up to the task of writing a research paper.
Right. So.
And it should be up to the organisations to highlight this. Their institutions should be able to highlight. There should be standards. I'm sure there are, of course, standards and processes in place to be able to track and monitor the outputs of their researchers.
Mm-hmm. All right. So talking about let's say potential misconduct related retractions. This is a story from Retraction Watch. It is titled "A pair of management papers retracted for similarities to earlier work." So this is based on anonymous tips who have flagged the issue, leading to an investigation. The journal is investigating. So both the papers, the two papers in question, were published by Emerald Publishing, and they appeared in reputable journals. Both share the same first author, and the retraction notices highlighted overlapping data and unreliable findings. Now, the publisher has already confirmed that the authors could not justify why this happened, and the author in question has been critiqued in the past by Elizabeth Bick and other research integrity activists. So, my question to you: it seems like, I don't know, is it a honest error, or is it something that is like a salami slicing of a research data? We don't know that. We are
We
investigating.
don't know. And I think the thing that surprised me about this, and maybe I don't know enough about the detail of this particular paper, is that there are so many good tools available, which publishers use on a regular basis to check whether there's any previous versions of this paper in existence. You just have to do a search for plagiarism checking software, and you'll come up with 10, 20 different options that you can use. Some even free. This isn't the first time this has happened, and I'm sure it's not the last.
But the one challenge with, I guess, plagiarism software would be that, if the data is copied or a slice of the data is being used, or same slice of the data, same model, etc., are used in another paper, that is difficult to detect with plagiarism, purely data
Well,
related.
yeah, it's true. I mean, there's a difference between um, plagiarism and salami slicing. Salami slicing, there can be salami slicing a perfectly new and novel piece of research into 6 different papers. That used to be very common in the noughties, for example, the early noughties, where
Mm.
researchers would they'd create a paper on the theory, they'd create a paper on the methodology, they'd create a paper on the findings, they'd create a paper on this experiment. There'd be like 5 or 6 different papers
Mm-hmm.
coming from one piece of one research project. And publishers have worked very hard to educate authors to change that, but clearly it's still happening.
No, but in such a case, if suppose it's not salami slicing. If suppose a series of papers is based on a same data set, but it's building from one paper to the last paper, then at least if you can cite the paper, that is a legitimate case of using the same data. But in this case, the suspicion is that it is fine if suppose I have the same patient set and I am reporting early findings, and I'm using the same patient set to report late findings of some sort of an intervention. That's acceptable. But
sorry to contradict you, Kagan,
Hmm.
but what does the reader want to see? The reader wants to see, a complete piece of research. Surely they want to see not just they'd be interested to know what the early findings were, but that same paper should then also go on to say, and as a result of changes made, later findings came up with a different outcome.
But
In one paper that would cover that and provide a sort of solid conclusion.
right, but this is true. I'm giving an example from medicine where trials and everything. When you have to report on an urgent basis how an intervention could help.
Oh, okay, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so from that point of view, I mean, as such, I'm giving a very simple example of how the same data set can be used as part of a future, as in another research paper. But you have to
Mm.
explicitly mention that some of this has already been reported. We are reporting new findings or something will be mentioned in the new paper. So here it is not the case apparently, and it's data forgery. So my question to you, generally, a early career researcher, how can do you have any sort of advice on how they can prevent this, and do you think that automation in terms of finding out data, if data is plagiarized, is this something that the publishers are looking for as a tool for screening?
Obviously, data forgery needs to be stamped out
Mm-hmm.
as early as possible, and that should be part of the training for every researcher. That the data that has been created is honest, is open, represents the findings. Otherwise, they're in breach of surely every research integrity contract there is.
Right.
But if an author needs help, if an author needs support, there must be internal process they can go to within their own organization. Say, they can talk to third-party organizations like us, or we can put them in touch with an expert in their field that may be able to guide or mentor them.
Right, right. And talking about a related story is it's another news story, a career news story from Nature published last month. It's titled "Publish or Perish: Culture Blame for Reproducibility Crisis." This is another slice of the sort of same story, where a survey of over 1,600 biomedical researchers highlights the publish or perish culture as a major factor for reproducibility, the
Yeah.
problems. So some of the problems cited are small sample sizes in the research that is being reported, as well as selective data reporting as common issues. And the study emphasizes the need for systemic change in research practices. So some of the things that are recommended are open data sharing and collaboration, which is straightforward. But I mean, this is the other side of it. Look, if because not enough material is being reported in the original study, there is difficulty in reproducing it. So it is not surprising from my point of view. Again, I'm going to ask you this question: how can early career researchers make sure that their research is reproducible?
Well, this is difficult, never having conducted or run a research program myself to be able to say categorically what should and shouldn't be done. But as somebody who's worked in academic publishing as long as I have, these sorts of issues should be being picked up in peer review if they're not being picked up in their own organizations. If an early career researcher is starting a piece of research, surely there's got to be some kind of template or process they need to go through with their mentors, with their heads of department, with heads of research, whoever that might be within the organization, whoever's determining how the funding can be allocated, to say, okay, explain how the program's going to run, explain the scale, what's going to make this statistically significant. And if there's a small sample size. How is that getting through their research programs? And how is it getting through peer review?
Right. Right. It can also, I mean, there are things like, for example, we have our Enago reports brand, which has a lot of technical checks, including data availability statement and all sorts of statements. If suppose these, if you do not have this and you're reporting that there is some data that you fetched from somewhere else and you're not providing links to that, these can be flagged to you as a screening tool. So maybe research, I
Well,
would recommend. Yeah, I would recommend this.
sorry.
No, no, you finish. You finish.
No, I was going to say you're absolutely right. Every good journal will have rules of play. Rules of engagement. As an author, you need to understand what those rules of engagement are in terms of how the paper needs to be structured, what material you need to be making available, that information is honest and it's openly available. And tools like Enago reports, for example, and there are other tools out there, of course, as well. But tools like Enago reports will help you sort of tick the boxes to make sure you're doing what it is the publisher needs you to do.
Right, right. And talking about retractions, unfortunately, we have sort of, this is a story that we based the title of the episode on. The story is it's a research integrity news story stating that Ethiopia has the highest rate of scientific paper retraction. So this is based on a study that has been posted in a repository. I'll quickly show you that, but I'll quickly read out my notes. Ethiopia has the highest rate of retractions between 2022 and 2024. Other high retraction countries include those in the Middle East, China, and I think and Pakistan, which is surprising for me. And the countries with more retractions may lack robust research infrastructure is the conclusion that the author draws. And I'm going to show you. This is an interesting map, and where you have the paler parts like yellow and green, that's where, or light blue, that is where the retractions are more common. So
what is that? That's saying that in Ethiopia, nearly 13% of papers are retracted. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I understand. So this is another chart which is there. Hold on, let me just scroll up here. So the label for the x-axis is not provided, but I think it's percentage of papers being retracted. You can see this is a useful thing.
Yeah.
Again, retractions can be due to a lot of different things. But if it's an honest mistake, maybe researchers can be educated regarding it. And if it's a, let's say, scientific misconduct, then again, the authors can. Remember, we talked about the pledge for research integrity a few weeks ago. The French research community now needs to do that. Something like that can be instituted. What do you think, Tony?
It's difficult to make any real judgment here, apart from I think the findings of or the conclusion of the authors is correct, and that is it something to do with a lack of maturity in the research ecosystem there, that there isn't enough experience, there aren't enough people that can help and support local researchers in Ethiopia to be able to say, look, this is what a good paper is. This is what's required, because they're still building that expertise, they're still building that knowledge base. I feel sorry for them in a sense, and at the same time, they're not in a position to be able to pay for external support. So, yeah, I think that I wonder how much work publishers can do. There are really good programs that over the last 20 years, I think we've discussed this in the past, which have started to make content available more widely in sort of lower funded countries. So these researchers are seeing this content, they want to be able to replicate, or at least replicate the experience of publishing in these high profile journals, and just don't maybe have a lack of understanding in terms of what's actually required.
Sticking with the theme of retractions, but in a positive, like technological innovation that is good for you to know whether a paper is retracted or not, the American Psychological Association PsycInfo has integrated the Get Full Text Researches. That's a brand. GetFTR is a brand. It's retraction errata feature, which is very useful. So in a nutshell, researchers who are using the PsycInfo platform, which I think I've loaded here, this is a platform. If they are scrolling through or trying to find research, if the paper has been retracted, apart from the fact that GetFTR tells you whether the paper is freely available and you don't have to go through a paywall, but also you will get to know whether the paper has been retracted. So this is very useful when you're doing your literature review. And this integration uses info from Crossref and Retraction Watch, and it is accessible even without full text access. So even without needing the paper to be full text available, whether that paper has been retracted or not. And APA, the American Psychological Association, aims to improve research experience and integrity. And this update is available for all all users of the platform. So very thoughtful, in my opinion, API having done this.
Yeah,
And I really like Get FTRs, all the features that they have. We have already talked about the scientific record. You cannot sort of delete an article just because it was retracted for whatever reason it might be. But if you have flags like this, it is very useful for somebody who's doing genuine research, right, Tony?
absolutely. And if you're not working in the field of psychology, there are other tools out there that will help identify retracted papers. Obviously, Retraction Watch is a very useful resource. Even within our own services, we have a something reference quality check, which if an author uses it, they can see from their references which of those references have been retracted, so they can then make a decision before the paper is actually published whether to use that, to use that reference or not.
Right. The last main story that we have is an interesting COPE announcement. It was last month. It's titled "Welcome to 2025." So, Committee on Publication Ethics is COPE, abbreviated as COPE. Now, the new strategic plan is described here, and there are some goals, and it's primarily to do with maintaining the integrity of the published record. So there are some goals listed here which focus on articulating clear ethical principles and empowering stakeholders and bringing people together. And the upcoming guidance documents, some of these are very interesting, Tony. They're issuing expressions of concern, managing guest edited collections, because these have been known to have higher rates of retraction and potentially scientific misconduct.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And disclosing, applying, and administering author fees and waivers, all sorts of very interesting guidance documents. But one comment, this is from Journalogy, that Mr. Butcher has commented that he would also like such organizations to come up with what to do when something like a citation manipulation is detected. So there are no clear guidelines for that. So maybe COPE can improve it. And I'm so happy to see such good measures and such good healthy documentation for anybody who's interested in maintaining research integrity being published by organizations like COPE.
And organizations like COPE, they're trying to set standards in scholarly publishing, and I think by constantly reviewing the assessing the marketplace, assessing what's happening in the marketplace, and updating their policies, it helps publishers to understand what best practice looks like. It also helps researchers to understand what best practice looks like.
Right.
So I applaud their efforts.
And obviously, there's a event schedule will be published later, I believe. I'm a big fan of COPE events, and I think the Publication Integrity Week is led by COPE, which comes in October, if I'm not mistaken. So, such wonderful initiatives, and this hopefully will prevent at least the frequency of research misconduct and research integrity issues that we have been seeing and we have been talking about on PubShorts for such a long time. Now, quick hits. It's not something new, but this is from Retraction Watch, a news article titled "Sage Slaps More Than 100 Papers from One Journal with Expressions of Concern." We just talked about expressions of concern. So this is in the first mass retraction via Sage. They did something in 2023, and there's a common author again. And the interesting tidbit is that the author is affiliated as per the record to an institute, but the institute does not have a page. So maybe it is a forged affiliation. And the Scopus has raised initial concern about the journal in question, which is American Surgeon, content quality, and the investigations are still ongoing, but there is no clear answer as to why this has happened. So, well, prolificity and potential, correlation overlap with research misconduct is a theme that we have discussed. Do you have any suggestions for early career researchers? I'm just asking you from the early career researcher point of view, because I think they might be tuning into PubShorts more than, let's say, established researchers. But what are your thoughts, Tony?
I think we've already covered this. Talk to your mentors, talk to experienced or researchers who have published in high impact journal, in high quality international journals. There's always going to be bad actors in this space, and publishers need to have processes in place to identify who they are.
Yeah, and another.
So I applaud Sage for withdrawing its papers.
And for anybody who's starting their research career, please, educate yourself. And some other things that I think Enago Academy has a bunch of articles and resources, including videos and courses that'll help you to understand how to detect any flags for the potential. You might be misled into research misconduct, and you don't want that to happen. So, for how to detect, for example, a predatory journal, these kind of things, you can. There are resources available, so you can look up Enago Academy and maybe subscribe to some of the courses if you're interested.
Yeah.
And going to the last quick hit, I think
And
Tony.
actually, so a lot of those resources are completely free of charge as well.
Excellent. So if those interested, please check it out. And the last quick hit that we have is another news story from, I think, Nature. It is titled "Star Ecologist Accused of Misconduct Loses University Post." So we briefly discussed this before we started this recording, Tony. So the star the ecologist is what's it? Thomas Crowther, I think, and he has been accused of misconduct. Yeah, and the institution is ETH Zurich, and it has received reports. The institution says that it has received reports of alleged misconduct on a variety of levels and has lost trust in the assistant professor. So, without going to a lot of details, the main thing that I gleaned is that in a previously published paper or a research document, this ecologist has stated some numbers on the space required for planting about another 1 trillion extra trees on planet Earth, and those were those numbers were criticized because they were inaccurate. This is what we have. So what are your thoughts, Tony? If it's a genuine error, in the sense like an overlook, should their funding be withdrawn? Because there's a lot of people involved, and
it's very difficult for me to make any comment. An organization as prestigious as ETH Zurich doesn't make these sorts of decisions lightly. So I don't know. There must be a lot more under the surface that hasn't necessarily been revealed for them to take that kind of step. I don't know. If it's a genuine error, then I'm sure this researcher will find no difficulty in finding another research organization elsewhere they'll take on its skills. I don't know. It's a difficult one to comment on.
Right, we'll keep an eye out for this. So, Tony, are you interested in ecology, and do you do any gardening?
I'm always interested in saving the planet. My garden is very green at the moment, a bit too green, and I'm not looking forward to the first cut of the year of the lawn. That's probably going to take me all weekend to get it done because the grass is very high. Are you a gardener yourself?
Well, I have a home garden. I live in an apartment in high-rise in Bombay. We've got a lot of plants here, and I do my best. I'm not a natural gardener, but I'm trying to learn, and I enjoy my plants because that's where I sit and read when I can find the time. Yeah. So Tony, if somebody were to listen to us or watch us for the first time, like, where can they find more? And you can also explain where they can reach out to us with suggestions or comments or topic suggestions.
Yeah, of course. So this is episode 36 of, is it 36?
35. 35.
35, beg your pardon. This is episode 35 of PubShorts. If you're interested in seeing the other 34 episodes, please go to our YouTube channel where you can subscribe or like any of our videos and share them, please, with your colleagues. If you want to contact either KK or me, we're on LinkedIn. Or if you want to contact me directly with suggestions or ideas on future topics for PubShorts, you can contact me, again, I say on LinkedIn or at tonyo@enago.com.
Great. And we will be back with fresh episodes of PubShorts next week. And until then, this is Dr. KK signing off on behalf of everybody who helps us bring such content to you, as well as on behalf of Tony. Bye-bye, Tony. We'll see you next.
See you next time.